Hello ladies and gentlemen, today I have come to Speech House Woods, which is in the Forest of Dean, and I've got to be a little bit careful because it's very muddy around here. Hopefully you've got a better picture of me today because I'm using a wide angle lens on the Osmo Pocket because I've had some problems with focusing in the past. Anyway, I've just got to be a little bit careful around here because I don't want to slip up in the mud. Now, Jesus, it's muddy around here. Now, on Thursday's video, I very much talked about something that I think is very important when you're choosing a lens, which one is right for you, the focal ranges that are right, and the F numbers that are available with each of those lenses and what they mean for you and which one you should go for. Well, in today's video, I wanted to do something connected but slightly different, because you see, for the Fuji system there are two lenses that are available for you if you wanted a bit of a zoom. You can get the XF 55 to 200, or you could get the XC 50 to 230. Now, I've looked at the XC 50 to 230 on this channel before. I don't know if you remember, but I borrowed my mum's lens because we all, as a family, we share our lenses around when people need something a bit different. Later in the year, after I'd done that video, it's getting very, very messy around here. My mum decided to buy a 55 to 200 lens, and I kind of inherited her 50 to 230, but I've never really used it because my main lens, of course, is the 18 to 135, and it tends to cover kind of 90% of what I want to do. So today, in this video, I'm actually going to do a shootout between those two lenses, and we're going to have a look at which one is not necessarily best, because I can tell you that straight away. The 50, I keep forgetting the focal ranges. The 200mm lens, the XF lens, is a better lens. There's no two ways about it. What I want to know is the 50 to 230 an acceptable lens if you just need it for certain things? In my experience so far, the XC lens is actually a very sharp lens. It's actually really good. But you don't really know what you're going to get until you actually try all of these things out. So right now, I'm braving this muddy path, which is full of mud, to try and find something to focus on, which will give me a good test of a zoom lens. I was hoping I'd find some trees, but as it is, the mud around here today, it's so difficult to walk through. I think we might have some problems finding something, and the camera just keeps losing me as well. Anyway, I'll see you after I've traversed this little bit of slippage.
The rest of this video is going to be dedicated to the shootout between the two lenses. When I took the photos, I did all of the ones with one lens, changed the lens over, and then did all of the pictures again with the second lens. And so what you'll see is me taking the photos at different periods of time with the different lenses on. We start with the very first picture and the 55 to 200mm lens.
Okay, so I found what I hope is a relatively good location, and I found my first shot as well. And what we've got here, you should be able to see it on screen now. We've got a tree right in front of us. There's either side of it, there's some really nice colours coming in from the light. The sun is absolutely perfect today, even though it's, I suppose, midday, 1 o'clock-ish, I suppose, by now. I've got some backlight coming in. I've also got some darker areas over here, so it's a pretty difficult shot to get. This, however, what I really like about the tree is the thing that really got my attention, because you've got two colours in this tree. You can see, if I bring my finger in here, you can see on the bark there's a really nice red, and there's a really nice green. You've got the yellows coming in just behind it, just over over here. If I focus on my hand over here, the sort of the autumn colors coming in behind it. So what I'm going to do now is line that up so that the tree, the middle of the tree, is falling in the center of that bark. Now, what I'm doing right now is I've got the camera at 50, I want to say 55 mil. And we're going to, so I'll stop this now and turn this on to proper mode, photography mode. So what we've got here is a shutter speed of 125. We've got an f4, which I think is kind of the lowest point of the lens, and we've also got an ISO of 500, and that's going to give us all of the colors and things in there. I'm not going to bracket this shot because I don't think it needs it. The light is pretty much perfect as it is, and we're taking this with the 50 to 200 to start off with. And what I'm going to do with all of these shots is exactly the same thing, because from here I've actually got, because we're in a forest, I've actually got a shot that's over here, and I've probably got one that's sort of down here that way, and we can use different focal lengths in order to get the right shot. So first of all, do what we always do for this. I'm going to put this on a 2-second timer. I'm going to make sure it's this one, isn't it, that the stabilization is off. We'll focus, and I'm focusing on the tree, so hopefully it's the bark of the tree that's going to be right. And I moved the camera as soon as I touched it. Let's try that once more in the right place. Okay, great. I'm just going to have a quick look at that photo. I want to see what sort of job. You see, it's really sharp. The bark there, even when I zoom in, is actually really, really sharp. So I'm very excited about the results that we're going to get from this lens. Okay, so we are back. I've got the new lens on, and a couple of things that you have to be aware of with this lens before you even start. First of all, the F number has to be controlled with the front dial. There is no way of doing it any other way. There's no aperture ring like you get on the other cameras. And whilst that can be a bit of a problem, actually it's not in this case. You can use it. It's not quite as fun as some of the other lenses. Secondly, this is 50, not 55, so I've had to recompose the shot just slightly. The other thing is that the lowest aperture, the highest aperture that I can get on this is f4.5. We are already at f4.6, although the rest of the settings haven't changed very much. We're at a 60th of a second ISO 400. I'm going to focus here and then take this shot. Everything else is pretty much the same, because I want to try and get this as close to the shots that we've taken today as possible. So that's the first one done.
Here we have the first two images side by side, and if you're just looking at them like this, then you really can't tell the difference between the two. Certainly one has better light in it, but that's not really giving you an idea of an overall quality of the lens. It's not until we really pixel peep at those images that you start to see the quality of the 50 to 200mm and where it makes a difference. Of course, if you printed these images off, unless you were looking through a loupe, you probably wouldn't notice anything. But you can see the bark on the 50 to 200mm, it's just slightly sharper. And there are also better colours in the image as well, but to be honest, I'd put that down to the day, as there was a significant change in light between taking the two shots. I'd love to know what you think about the difference in the image. Let me know in the comments.
Now, the next shot is going to be a landscape shot, I think. So it means turning the camera around, and we're going to do two things here. I'll flip the screen up whilst I'm doing it. Put this in like so, and just shift this around here. And there is a tree that has got a really lovely sort of bend to it, a really lovely look to the whole thing. So what I'm doing now, I'm just going to use the straightener thing to straighten it, the level tool to straighten it, and we'll zoom in as much as we can. I want to get a bit of foreground, but I don't want to get a lot, and we're still going to place that on the right hand horizon line and then focus in just on that. And as soon as I've done that, the whole thing kind of comes into focus. And it's not a particularly foggy day. So there is some fog, there is some mist around, and you can just see that in this shot. You can see kind of the layers of mist that we're going to get. So this is at just over 100 mil. We're zoomed in at now. 2-second timer, same sort of thing, and let's see how this does. Okay, right, again, just have a quick look at the photo, zoom in. It's all nice and sharp, which is you kind of expect. And what I do love about this, one of the things that the zoom lenses do is it will compress the background and the foreground together. So whereas right now, if I were to, I tell you what, let's put this onto movie mode again, you'll see what I mean. So if I zoom out right now, you'll see that even though the trees haven't moved, and what we've done is really pull the lens back, you can see some depth into the forest. As I zoom in, look, you'll notice that even though I've got the camera roughly in the same position as the composition that we've just had, the trees behind it they look like they're closer together. It looks like the background's compressed onto the foreground, and this can be really, really useful, and one of the reasons why you might want to use a longer lens, a zoom lens, to do landscape photography with, especially if you've got something in the distance that you want brought up closer to you, with things like the sun or the moon behind it, and you want the sun and the moon to look a lot bigger. Doing that at a full zoom, you're going to bring what looks like the moon closer to you. This is really good, by the way, when you get those nights where you get those super moons, and they're really big to start off with. If you can find a place to stand when you've got a super zoom, which gets a really nice subject in it, and you get that at full zoom, you can get some phenomenal pictures. I'm going to zoom into around about 100, and I can just about see the image that I wanted to get here. Just go in a little bit more on that one. Got everything in sharp focus. So this, again, it's exactly the same settings that we had before. This time f5.6, but everything else seems to be relatively balanced, so we're okay with that. I'm going to take that. Oh no, you see, I forgot to put the timer on. There we go. And that seems all right. Now, I'm not taking a look at these as we're doing them, because really we need to get these into Lightroom to have a proper look at them. And you know what? I'm not going to be pixel peeping very much with these videos either.
We've taken a look at one image close up, and I can tell you that the two lenses perform pretty much the same across the board. So the real question is whether the XC lens, the 50-230mm, is any good at all, but surprisingly it is. The image you're seeing now is from the 50-230mm, and it's almost indistinguishable from the 55-200mm equivalent. It's slightly softer in focus, but the overall image still seems nice and sharp and crisp. You'd be happy having an image from that lens, and from seeing prints in the past, I can tell you that the images that you get are surprisingly good for a lower spec lens. And when we're talking about soft images, well, that really only comes into play when you crop or zoom. So if you're not expecting to do that, the XC lens is great to have in your kit for that extra reach. And even if you do crop the XC lens, it still performs very well. Not as well as the bigger alternative, but acceptably well for most usage cases. Perhaps I would make a different assumption if I was going to print large format prints. Maybe in that case, the XF lens would be an absolute necessity. But for the majority of things that you're going to be doing with your camera, the XC lens is pretty good. But before I left this test behind, I had to take a shot at full zoom on both of the lenses.
One of the other things that zoom lenses are good for framing stuff that is just a little bit too far away. Now, if you're doing this with landscapes, with big landscapes, you might want to frame a mountain, the top of a mountain or the peak of a mountain. I was at a place called Cowley Peak earlier in the year, and you can actually go and see that video on the channel. And I was able to use a zoom lens in order to get a shot of the Brecon Beacons in Wales, which is miles and miles and miles away, but the zoom brought it close enough so that I had a really nice red sky. Go and see the video, you'll like it. What we've got here is something which is very similar, because the tree is actually quite a distance away, and what I really want to focus on here is kind of the light that's hitting everything. So we're exposing for the light, and we're going to be a little bit lower down in terms of sort of steps and everything. So let's stop this video now. Flip it back onto this. We are pretty much there in terms of settings. So the settings that we had before are about right. Now I brought the ISO up to 800, but actually I think I'd rather have an ISO of 400 here, and then we're going to take the shutter speed to 60. We're on a tripod, there's no wind around, so that shouldn't be a problem. One of the things you might want to consider if you are on a tripod, especially on Fuji cameras, I've noticed there's not so much on the Nikon that I had, which gave a little bit of a wobble, but because this doesn't have a in-body image stabilization on it, we're just dealing with the stabilization that's in the lens, then you get a really nice steady shot even if you've got your stabilization on. Anyway, this is what we're going to do. We'll take that now. Let's just have a quick look at it and see what's in focus. It's pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with that. I think what I want to do, however, is change the focal point here, and we're going to focus on those little leaves, because I think it's the leaves that are really the subject of the thing. So we'll take that 2-second timer, that'll go off, and let's see if we zoom in now. Yeah, you see the leaves are in focus, the bark is in focus as well, and if I bring that shot up onto screen in just a second, you'll see what I mean about the background compression, because the tree that's behind it, that is a little way behind it, is still a little bit closer. It feels a little bit closer. There was a tree and there was a... Now the interesting thing on this right now is the light has changed so much that the thing that I had in focus before just isn't there. But we can still see the other tree in the background. So I'm going as far as I can to replicate the shot that we had with the other one. Take it back a little bit because it was at 200, not 230. And this will just give us a bit of an idea of what we're doing. Is that even the right tree? Sometimes you do these things and all the trees look exactly the same and there's nothing you can do about it. Anyway, that'll do. Take that photo. Let's try that once more without me kicking the tripod. So one thing you've got to remember when you're doing something with a zoom lens is that it only takes a sort of a little touch of the thing and the picture can wobble all over the place, and that's whether you've got image stabilization on or not. So that's something to be very aware of, and one of the reasons why, if you're doing something with a tripod and it's windy, you might want to consider not doing it at that time, because the zoom can be really affected by the fact that there's wind there as well.
We'll start off with the image of the lower spec XC lens, because by the time I'd taken this, the wonderful backlight had almost disappeared, so it doesn't look as good for that reason alone. The first time I took this lens out, I was really impressed with its performance for taking animals at the zoo. It certainly performed that day, and I've got some super sharp shots from it. Putting it up against a lens that's twice the price doesn't really seem like a fair trade-off, but it holds its own pretty well. Now I should say the image stabilization in the lens is only good for about 1 stop of light, whereas the 55-200 can handle, I think, 5 stops at light. The 55-200 also handles light better. Still a variable aperture, but it caps out at 4.8 instead of starting at 4.5, like it does in the 50-230. That can make a massive amount of difference if you're in darker conditions, and it was one of the reasons that I chose to do these tests with the lenses wide open. But if the XC lens is the only thing in your price range, then you are still getting one hell of a lens. And if, like me, most of your landscape photography takes place between f8 and f11, where both lenses perform best, you're closing down some of those differences yet again. Ultimately, if I was going to give buying advice, it's simple. Get the 55 to 200mm lens unless you just can't afford it. If the 50 to 230 lens is right in your price range, then go for it. You can always part exchange it later off the price of the 50 to 200. But do check for both of these lenses for sale second hand before you choose anything, because either way you will pick up a real bargain there. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with this final image from the 50 to 200mm lens. I love the light in this, and I was so pleased with the woodland colours that were all around it. I really, really must take this lens out again. That's it for this video. If you've enjoyed it, please do give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. If you're new here, then hit that subscribe button, click the little bell icon at the end and choose the all notifications tab so that you don't miss out on any videos when I post them. Until next time, thanks ever so much for coming along, and I'll see you in the next video. And of course, don't forget, keep taking those photos.